All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Lewis. I am the Assistant Vice Provost for Outreach and Recruitment at UMass Chan Medical School in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm also a professor in the Department of Molecular Cell and Cancer Biology here at UMass Chan, and the holder of the George F. Booth Chair in the Basic Sciences here at UMass Chan. So what I'm going to do today is help facilitate a wonderful panel discussion. We have three, I think, very outstanding individuals, three fantastic young Black men who are pursuing PhDs or MD PhD combined degrees at different institutions across the country. And I'm going to help facilitate a conversation with them about what it is like to, go along this path and to pursue this direction. I'm going to have them introduce themselves in a few minutes, but first I'm going to start with a short presentation talking about the application process for PhD programs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can do that. I just have to make sure I hit the right buttons here. Always a little bit technically challenged, but I think we can do this. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. This is going to be maybe 15 minutes or so discussion on how to put your best self forward in the application process. I have to give appropriate attribution to my colleagues here at UMass Chan, Ariana, Balayan, and Erin, Turchetta, who are the individuals that originally put forward these slides or created these slides, and I've modified some of them slightly. So just want to outline the application process. We'll go through this very quickly. I think a couple of really key things is probably this first step, right? To prepare. Everything that we do, it is much easier if we are highly prepared before we start this process. Essentially, all of this presentation is going to focus on the application and the required documentation. Very quickly go through the interview. Won't talk about the last steps in this pipeline, but certainly during the question and answer portion of our discussion, we can go through that if folks wish. So I think the first thing to think about before applying is, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to go to graduate school? As highly talented individuals, there are many things that you could do. And so why is this the thing that you want to pursue? I think it's also important to ask yourself, critical questions about what type of program you're looking for and where you want to be. So if, for example, you know that you want a more intimate program, not to pick on my alma mater, UCLA, but maybe don't apply to a program at UCLA, which is a very, very large institution and has a very large body of PhD trainees. Think about where you want to be. Maybe you are from the Southeast and you want to stay in the Southeast. And if you really know that, maybe don't apply to the University of Michigan, for example. And be honest about where you want to be, right? Different people want to be in different places for different reasons. And I think it's really important that you be honest about what it is that you as an individual want. Okay. And a critical reason for that is that as you're moving through a graduate training program, there are going to be challenges. I think you'll hear from our panelists today about, their paths and some of the challenges that they've had to work through. And one of the really critical things is that when you are going through those challenging periods, you need to have confidence that you're in the right place. And so spending time thinking about the type of program that you want to be in and the geographic place that you want to be in is really important. So again, before applying, again, plan. If you have a pre-health advisor, an academic advisor at your institution, if you are working in a lab and you have colleagues in that lab, really speak with them and get their input. Okay. Again, research the schools and programs of interest and focus on fit for you, right? Again, this is you're in a competitive application process, but ultimately you're going to end up in a challenging graduate training program And again, this needs to be the best place for you. And that includes, many things, including, I'll sort of highlight this one here, cost. There's varying cost of living in various places across the country. And for some of us, that is an issue, and we need to take that into account. It's really important to connect with folks at the institution before you apply. The more that people know you, I would say the better your chances. This is in many ways, a quantitative process. They're going to look at your prior research experience, your academics, but the people making decisions are human. And so human interaction matters. And finally, find out if fee waivers are available. Again, for some of us, this is a bit of an issue. And if it is for you, please find out about fee waivers. If you can get fee waivers, you can apply to more programs and therefore increase the likelihood that you're going to identify truly the best fit program for you. So I just want to touch on the application components. There is sort of the application form itself. And most of my time, I'm going to focus on these three components: your research and personal statements, your academic record or transcript, and your letters of recommendation. Okay. And really, from these three components, an admissions committee is really going to try and discern a few things. One, are you really passionate about doing this? Do you want to do this? Okay. Do you have necessary academic preparation? And we'll talk about academics in a minute. It doesn't mean that you need to be a 4.0 student. So have you taken the right courses, and have you done well enough to be prepared for what lies ahead? And do you have a sense of what you're getting into? And you get that from your prior research experience. And then the letters of recommendation, where folks are really going to talk about you. And, not just the fact that, yes, you've done research, and yes, you've got good grades, but really, what are your, as my friends here put it, my colleagues here put it, so your non-cognitive qualities. Are you persistent? Are you perseverant? Have you, really sort of demonstrated persistence and grit in the research setting on other aspects of your life? Okay. All right. So again, we'll touch now on academic and scientific preparation. And so academic preparedness, right? So the better your GPA, the better, but you don't have to have a fantastic GPA. But by fantastic, I would call that anything greater than a 3.5, 3.4. It's helpful, but it's not everything, okay? And since we're in a safe space, I'll raise my hand and say that, I wasn't even the 3.1 GPA student when I left college, okay? But what I did have is the second point here, which is an upward trajectory, right? And I was able to describe what my journey was like and why my early grades, or I should say, it's actually the grades in the middle of my college experience weren't so great, and how they improved again towards the end. Okay. It's important to know whether your program has specific prerequisite coursework or recommended coursework, and apply, if you need to take some classes to meet those requirements, please do so. And the admissions committee is going to look for mastery of foundational concepts in core sciences, in biology, chemistry. Depend on the program, they might pay attention to your courses and grades in physics and math courses. Okay. And if you are early in your college career, I would say work with an advisor to create a plan of study that meets these requirements. If you are later in your academic journey as an undergraduate, or you've graduated, there are, which I'll touch on at the end, there are ways to sort of, if you will, sort of remedy the absence of some of that curriculum. Okay. The other aspect that they're going to pay attention to is your research experience. Okay. And you're going to talk about that in your personal statement and your research statement. Okay. And so in your personal statement, again, for example, at our institution, there is a specific length and format that they ask you to follow. And so you should make sure that you know that. And talking about in your personal statement, talk about yourself and your journey, right? So talk about your passion. What makes you excited about science? What makes you want to do this? Provide examples of leadership, perseverance, and grit. Okay. So an example I would share from our own graduate school admissions committee when I was on the committee would be, we look very favorably on students who, for example, had to work while they were in school and yet made time, even if it was a relatively small amount of time, to pursue research opportunities. Right? It really said that the student prioritized and felt that this was really important, that even though they had lots of commitments, they really worked to try and find some amount of time to pursue research. I think it's important to customize your personal statement to the school that you're applying to in the program. If something reads as overly generic, it's not going to resonate as strongly with the admissions committee. And then importantly, get the input of folks who are knowledgeable about you and your journey. I think we all know what we want to say. And certainly when I write things, I feel like, okay, I've done that perfectly. I've communicated what I want to say. But if I share it with someone, they actually may not get it at all. Okay. And so I think work with others who know you to get their feedback on how to better craft that statement. Specifically when talking about your research, I think you really want to frame that research experience or research experiences in the context of scientific questions. Okay, so talk about the kinds of research experiences you've had, whether that's through college, working at a job after graduation, whether that be a summer research experience. Okay, talk about what was important in the field, what the question of the lab was, and how your project fit into that question. Talk about the skills, both the technical skills, but also the intellectual skills that you developed during those experiences, and how they shaped your interests. Okay, so maybe you did a summer experience in my lab, which is a cancer biology focused lab, and it was fine, it was fun. But through that experience and talking to colleagues who worked in the lab next to mine, you realize that what you're really interested in is immunology. Okay, and so talk about that. Talk about the events that happen through your research experience, through your interactions that have shaped the interests that you have. I'm going to skip this slide on the resume. Just suffice it to say that you will need to provide a resume typically as part of your application. It's going to be a standard format. It should be short, 1 to 2 pages. Don't send a 10-page document, please. 1 to 2 pages really hits the highlights of your education and any research or employment experiences that you have that both demonstrate your research experience, but also your ability to juggle multiple things at a time, right? So again, if you were working full-time while going to school, please put that on your resume. I think that's really important to share with an admissions committee. Okay. And then now we'll talk about letters of recommendation, right? So for most schools, this is going to be 3 letters of recommendation, but again, this might vary from institution to institution and from program to program. So please know what the requirements are, and please know how the letters are to be submitted. If they should be submitted through an online portal, please make sure your recommenders have the link to do that. If they email those letters in, they may not be received by the admissions committee. I think the critical things, if I can highlight what's in these last sort of 3 bullets, is get letters from people who know you well. So just because you got an A in a particular class, even if it is a relevant science class, if you did not interact very much with the professor for that class, and they only know you as student 100 out of 110 in the class, okay, don't get a letter from that professor, okay? It's better to get a letter from a professor in whose class maybe you had some challenges, and in the end you got a B, but you went and you spoke with them a lot in office hours, and they can really speak to the determination that you demonstrated, right? And how you sort of came from, maybe struggling with the material early in the class putting in the time and effort, right, and really sort of improving your performance in that class over the course of the semester. Okay, get letters from folks who've worked with you in the research setting. They can really speak to your interest in pursuing a PhD and becoming an excellent scientist. And get letters from folks maybe, who are not from a research setting, but with whom you've worked closely in other settings, whether it be in an extracurricular activity, a community service organization, or in employment. And if those folks can really speak to the kind of individual that you are, they can speak to your perseverance, they can speak to your leadership, your excellent communication, those will also be beneficial letter writers, okay? And again, you want them to talk about you and not simply about the fact that, you have this fantastic GPA and you got an A in this molecular biology course, okay? The admissions committee can see that you got that A by reading your transcript. They want to learn other things about you from the letters. Okay. So only quick thing I will say about interviews is that you'll submit your application, the admissions committee will review it, they will interview a subset of the folks who submitted applications. Dependent on the institution, these might be in person, they might be virtual. At my institution, our process now is to conduct virtual interviews over Zoom. And then once we have admitted candidates into the graduate school, then those folks come to visit campus. But it's different at different institutions. If you know who's going to be interviewing you ahead of time, do a little bit of research on who those folks are, what their interests are, so you can engage them in conversation. Us academic scientists, we all have fairly large egos. If you talk about things that are relevant to us in our science, it will go a long way. And importantly, I would say practice. Okay. Some of us, again, I'll raise my hand here, are introverts. We're quiet, we're shy, maybe we get a little bit nervous in interview settings. And so if you practice, if you write out what you want to say about your research or why you're interested in this particular program, do that, try and, get a good sense of what you want to say. And that will help you in the moment when, if you become quite nervous, you'll be able to sort of put some words out in cogent sentences and be able to engage in conversation, while those nerves are settling down. Okay. All right. So my last slide here is really, what if there are parts of my application that need to be strengthened? Okay. So if you are let's say a sophomore in college or a junior in college and you haven't had any prior research experience, right? Seek out that research experience where you are. If you're at an institution that does not have a lot of research experiences, even if there are some, see if you can get into those few research experiences at your institution and see if you can go to a larger institution that has a broader array of research opportunities during the course of a summer for a summer experience. Okay. If you know that you haven't taken certain courses that PhD programs really want to see their applicants take, map out a plan with your advisor to take those courses. But if you're further in your training, let's say you're a senior, you recently graduated, okay, and you realize, gosh, I don't have a lot of research experience. There are ways to get that, right? So you can apply to post-baccalaureate training programs. There are many across the country. Each of our panelists are at institutions that have post-bac training programs, okay? So certainly feel free to reach out to them about that. Seek employment in a research lab. So when I graduated from college, I felt that I needed more research experience. I also felt like I needed a break from taking classes, quite frankly. I needed to, make some money. So I went and I got a job in a research lab for 2 years. And I can tell you that for me, that was really a transformative experience and really prepared me to do well in graduate school. If your academic record in some of the key science courses is not so great, and there is a local community college, or I would say particularly a public university, that can keep the cost down, retake a couple of those courses, right? And I would say also pay attention, as a post-bac program, some of them allow you to take graduate level courses and demonstrate your ability to do well in graduate level curriculum. And certainly in academic settings, some universities allow their employees to take classes at either reduced cost or no cost. Okay, so if you're employed in a research lab in an academic center, see if there are opportunities to take courses at that university as well. And then finally, you can enroll in the master's degree program, right? If you feel that there really is a need to take many courses and really demonstrate how much you've grown academically, that is certainly an option. I put this as the last one just because for me, I'm not always an advocate for master's programs because often there's a significant cost associated with that. Okay, and I think that there are other ways to move forward on your journey without incurring that cost. And then the last point I want to make, this does not have to be a linear journey. Okay, and so if there are twists and turns in the road, it is okay. Really, what matters is that you get to where it is that you want to go. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to look at the time. I think if there are, I'm not entirely sure how we're going to take questions. I think if folks have the ability to put questions into the chat, or if there are a couple of quick questions that can be relayed to us from the room, we'll take a couple. Otherwise, I think we'll save questions for the very end of our panel discussion.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Go ahead.
Hi, how's everybody doing? First off, I want to thank you for joining us today. My first question is, as someone that didn't have any opportunities for research in undergrad just due to timing and other how would you say you kind of briefly touched on it as someone that still has like some interest in research, but it may not be imperative to like future career decisions? How would you say someone gets into that?
Yeah. So I'll take a first stab at answering that, and then I will allow my colleagues on the panel to chime in if they have additional things to add. For me, my suggestion would be employment in a research lab. Okay. So I think, if you have some science background, you have some curriculum, certainly many academic labs are looking for, motivated young people, who want to get more research experience. And so I would say, look for positions like that. The benefit is obviously you get paid, right? And you can accumulate that research experience. And through that, you can determine, I think this is what I want to do, or, this is nice, but I think what I really want to do is actually to become a nurse. And so I'm going to do that instead.
Yeah, I can also answer that. I think that post-bac programs are really good for, for helping discern what path you want to go on after graduating college. That a lot of them are like paid for, so you'll get a stipend. So that is like you don't have like the financial concern as much. And programs like I'm a mentor for a post-bac program, and that program has a lot of like research training involved. It has like career development and a bunch of different workshops for just how to navigate the research space. And so you can also, in addition to getting more research experience and have funding, you can also kind of learn more about what the path ahead would look like and what tools you'll need to excel in that space.
Okay. In addition to what David had said, I have an unconventional advice. It's quite unconventional, but If you're unable to get into a postbac or get employed in a research lab, I would also suggest you get computational biology experience. You do a lot of coding, learn how to code, and for instance, if you want to get into, let's say you want to do a PhD in biology or biomedical sciences or in the medical field, get computational experience related to the medical field, and let that be your research experience. Get some publications through those computational biology, do some projects in computational biology. Now, why that will help you gain research experience, and which you can talk about in your statement of purpose. When you apply to a program like a PhD program like UMass Medical School, for instance, I know other schools have that. It gives you a chance to, in your first year, do rotations. Um, Maybe you have computational biology experience, but when you do rotations, if you want to do with lab, during your rotations, you can pick up skills. You can pick up other skills. So in addition to everything that has been said, I would also advise you to look into computational biology, get coding skills, use those coding skills as your research experience. Talk about that in your statement of purpose.
Yeah, if I could also tag in here. What year are you? Where are you at in training?
I'm already graduated. COVID kind of threw off my kind of track and trying to maybe pursue research, and now I'm a couple of years removed, so I'm kind of in limbo as to what I want to do now.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I would double up on what Chijoke said. I think that is a really nice solution sometimes to being able to get into lab space in general. Working in a lab is top tier. I mean, getting a job is the best way to understand whether or not research is for you and to get experience. Some things that you can oftentimes do is when you're cold emailing people, you want to just make sure that, or if you're finding a job somewhere, you just want to make sure that you can talk about the research in a way that shows that you actually read and thought a little bit about what that person or what the lab in general is doing. You don't really understand how much traffic they get all the time in emails and other things. If you could make it worth their time when they talk to you, you will much more likely have success.
All right, cool. Thank you. Appreciate all your answers.
Okay, great. So thank you for that that question, and thanks for my colleagues on the panel for contributing answers here. So I think what I want to do now is to have each of them introduce themselves. I'm going to call on them individually, just have them tell you a little bit about their background, where they are, and what their interests are. And so just going to go in order in my screen. So I'm going to start with Reuben.
Hi, everyone. My name is Reuben. I am a sixth year, currently in the UCSF MD PhD program. Just finished my PhD in biophysics with an emphasis in complex biological systems, and we'll be heading back to medical school at some point soon. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. Went to school at undergrad at Washington University in St. Louis, biochemistry major, anthropology minor. I actually did a gap year before matriculating into my program. And in that gap year, I worked as a lab tech at UCSF in the Diabetes Center under Michael McManus. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Reuben. Chijoke?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Chijoke Onyeani. I'm originally from Nigeria. So for my undergrad, I studied at the University of Nigeria. I studied medical laboratory science in my undergrad. And after my program, I went on to work in the hospital for a couple of years as a medical laboratory scientist. And my experience is majorly centered on diagnosis of diseases, infectious diseases, and the rest of them. So after that, I decided that it was time to learn more about the things I've been working on in the bench, because when you come from the kind of place I come from, you are exposed to, you see infectious disease like you see it for real. And so I decided to study the mechanism of some of these infectious diseases, and that motivated me to come for my PhD in in UMass Medical School, and now I am in the Beha Lab at UMass Medical School, where I'm studying tuberculosis with the aim of, finding out the mechanism of hypoxia and how, when you talk about hypoxia, you're talking about lack of oxygen, in quotes. So how does that affect tuberculosis? How does that contribute to the development of tuberculosis? So that is what I am studying at the moment.
Great, thank you. And David.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Horsey. I'm originally from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I moved down to Baltimore County to study at UMBC for undergrad. I hopped around a couple different labs during undergrad research and kind of incrementally worked my way up to the interest that I've kind of landed in now. So I'm currently a third-year PhD student at Johns Hopkins University, and kind of building off my undergrad research, I'm interested in understanding like different mechanisms of how epigenetics is involved in different diseases. And so right now I'm studying the epigenetic regulators of triple negative breast cancer metastasis in the Ewald lab here. And just finished my coursework now. So right now I'm just like a full-time researcher.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Damien. So I want to encourage, as we're, we'll definitely leave some time for questions from the audience at the end of our conversation. I'm going to start by directing some questions at our panel. For many of these, I'll ask each of them to share their own perspectives on this. There may be one or two questions where I will direct them specifically to one or two individuals on the panel. But I think you can get a sense that they're at different stages of their PhD training and moving through the biomedical sciences space. And so I think you can get slightly different perspectives from them. So, maybe the place to start is, if you will, the beginning, right, and getting started. So maybe each of you can tell me, what inspired you to pursue a PhD? I think given the educational backgrounds that each of you have, you could have gone in a different direction as well. So what inspired you to take this particular direction? And I'll start with David.
Yeah, I guess I've been interested in science for a long time. That was, excuse me, that was one of the subjects I did the best in like grade school, and so it just felt like the natural thing to do in college. And for me, I was part of a scholarship program at UMBC called the Meyerhoff Scholars, and that program is kind of designed to help students from underrepresented backgrounds move on to a PhD, like a PhD after, or MD PhD after college. And so they were the ones that kind of encouraged me to continue to pursue undergrad research experiences. And while I think I was a little bit, had some mixed feelings about like this next big step, a lot of my friends were a good source of encouragement that we kind of went through a lot of this together. So I want to say I was like peer pressured into going to grad school, but it helped make that transition a lot easier. Was just like kind of go through this application process, talking through our like fears, our anxieties, and what we were really excited about. And I realized I was very excited about these questions about fundamentals of how does cancer operate, how do epigenetic factors impact like health outcomes, like just looking at health disparities in general. Those were really interesting questions to me, and I felt like I had something to contribute. And so I think all those things kind of came together to lead me to take that jump, and I'm happy that I did.
Thank you, David. Reuben, we'll go to you next.
Yeah. I started off really trying to do research, I would say. I knew I had a real interest in science. I did a lot of summer science programs. I'm from New Orleans. Xavier University is nearby, the HBCU. They pride themselves on cranking out Black doctors. So I went and did a lot of their summer science programs, knew pretty early on I wanted to do science. I got my first research experience that way, kind of after like tracking down opportunities. If you're earlier on in the stage, I don't know what the demographics are right now, but if you're still in college, for example, or below, trying to do summer research internships is a great opportunity to get a little bit of a taste of research in a short, compact period of time. And you can layer on top of that, getting more, going to try to do more. That was kind of my original starting place. I thought science was super interesting. I was working on a project as a young kid, basically, before I went to college. And that's kind of how I started. For me, doing an MD PhD was really tied to that. And oftentimes, if you have a good advisor, they'll tell you that MD PhDs typically are people who, even when you're talking about going to medical school, research is somewhere in your plans. And so for me, it was the value of being able to study disease. I remember in one of the summer research programs that I had done, there was a panel like this where an MD PhD was present. And he basically said that MD PhDs exist as the bridge between the lab and the clinic, where you take things that are known in the clinic as diseases that you don't have treatments for, or maybe that you don't really understand all that well. And then you try to develop models to study that in a lab. And then you spend your time in the lab working on that to hopefully then translate back and say, okay, well, there's this tech, there's this model, this drug, this agent, this biologic, whatever it is that we use in the lab that I think could actually impact patients. And so you exist as that conduit, going back and forth between those two, trying to join the clinic and the lab. And that really stuck with me. I really thought that was a worthwhile career to develop new treatments, new drugs, and to try to develop new understandings of disease. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Thank you, Reuben. And Chijoke?
Okay, so for me, it's a bit personal. So I come from Nigeria, originally from Nigeria, and Lassa virus was discovered in Nigeria, for instance, and other infectious diseases. So this sort of fascinated me and also sort of scared me as well, because every year you have a lot of outbreaks of Lassa infections in Nigeria, and you don't really have like a very, 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 very good drug for some of these things. And so because of the lack of resources and everything, in my mind, I've always wanted to do vaccine development. How can we develop efficient drugs to cure some of these diseases? This has always been something that has bothered me, because coming from a country like Nigeria, where you do not have some of these resources readily available to you, I wanted to be someone that will be in the field, that will have the knowledge to do some of these things in the future. And so that's why I've always thought about infectious disease research. And then learning about PhD, I learned that the PhD program will give me the opportunity to study a particular topic and study it in depth and understand what that means. So that really fascinated me. So I was like, okay, since I'm interested in infectious disease research, why don't I focus on one infectious disease and then study it? Initially, I wanted to do biology research, but that didn't really work out. So now I'm doing TB, but I am still happy because TB is also a very important disease that affects people from the third world countries. 1.5 million people die annually. So looking at these numbers, I want to be able to contribute to the development of vaccines later on in future. And I know that studying this in my PhD will give me a platform to understand the mechanism of this infectious disease. And so this is what motivated me to do a PhD.
Great. Thank you, Chijoke. So I think it was David who mentioned in his answer, I'm going to paraphrase this, maybe having some doubts about whether this is the direction to go. So I wanted to put this out to each of you. Were there moments of doubts about, should I embark on this path? And were there specific mentors or other resources that helped to convince you that this is a direction to pursue? And any of you can take this on first.
Okay, let me jump in first. Okay, so for me, yes, I definitely had moments of doubt. One, coming to a different country to do a PhD, it's kind of scary. Yeah. So I was doubtful of that at first. Secondly, doing a PhD in biomedical science takes a long time as well. So that as well got me a little bit worried. Am I gonna be able to commit 6 years or 7 years of my life studying this particular stuff? So I was worried at first. And another question is, which I believe all of us struggle with, is imposter syndrome. You always ask yourself, am I good enough? So you ask yourself that question, am I good enough? So these were doubts that I had initially. But then looking back at it, what encouraged me, I had friends who were already in PhD programs in the US, and they were really doing well. And so in my mind, I positioned my mind, I told myself, if they're able to do that, I can do it too. So that sort of encouraged me to look beyond the fears and to apply, knowing that if my friends who I know too well are doing this and they're excelling in this field, I too, I can also excel if I do a PhD. And also, I had mentors who I talked to. Some of my mentors are postdocs in Germany. So I have a postdoc in Germany. I have another postdoc in the UK who are like very good mentors to me. And so I talked with them, and they had a way to allay my fear. They encouraged me, and they told me that this is something I can do. You've been doing research in a way, and you are someone that can be hardworking. You are very hardworking. So why can't you do this? So they sort of encouraged me, and the encouragement really led me.
Yeah, if I could maybe jump in here. I think about this a lot these days on the other side of the PhD. And I think somebody gave me the stats on this, so I always like to share this now because I think it really helps you put into perspective what you're going to be doing, right? So PhDs as a group in the US is about 1.4% of the population. Take a moment, sit with that. Okay, now, what's the percentage of them that are Black? Okay, take a moment. It's about 7. So 7% of 1.4% in this country will be Black PhDs. That's a small fraction of the world. So I think when you start on this journey, it's sometimes helpful for you to really realize the mountain you're about to try to climb. Now, that's not to dissuade you from the mountain. By no means is the whole point of any of this session to prevent you from that. In fact, resources are being developed here to get you to do that. To how do we figure out how to get more of us over that mountain and through? So yeah, there are a lot of times where you will probably question, is this a ridiculous thing to be doing? Like, really, truly, like, am I supposed to be here doing this? And that's okay, 100% okay. I think you kind of have to ask yourself when you're going on this process, what's your why? Like, your reason. And that reason needs to be your new best friend. You need to wake up in the morning and talk with your reason. You need to, at times, go to bed thinking about your reason. You need to find a way to make that reason your best friend, because at the end of the day, it's going to be there when there are not good things going on. A PhD is hard. Experiments fail. Things happen. People don't always give you the help that you want. Sometimes you don't get that answer that you want. Sometimes, there's a lot of obstacles along the way. But one, establishing a good why. And then after that, you should really spend a lot of time thinking about who you want to bring on board to help you get across that mountain. And I think once you have that identified, people can help you a lot more easily when they understand what your passion is, what your drive is. This is, 1.4%, 7% of that 1.4%. No one's going to carry you up the mountain. Unfortunately, you will have to be doing that, but people will help. People will chip in. and they will do what they can. But you have to have a good understanding of what you're going to them for, why you're going to them, what makes you want to do something this, rare. So I would sit with that a lot of the time, and ask yourself that even now, like, what's your strong reason as to why? And there's a lot of good reasons, and I'm sure many of you have them already. So
Yeah, kind of jumping off of both of what's been said before. Yeah, the imposter syndrome, I think, is hard to avoid. I know I was certainly very impressed with all of my friends, and I could very clearly see in them why they were going to grad school, why they wanted to pursue this. And I think it can be hard when, especially in academia, in some space that can be a little bit competitive, for better and for worse. It could be hard to see all of what you bring to the table. And I think that's kind of why it's important to have a team that you have a support system of support, that you have friends, that some people who are going through what you're going through, some people who are very far away from what you're going through, to kind of give you that perspective. I know I have a system, even while like I'm here at grad school, that I want to have lunch with a friend like once a week, like at least just so we can bounce how we're feeling, what we're thinking off of each other. Because yeah, like Reuben said, there aren't a ton of us here. And so it can be an isolating experience sometimes. And so to have like these relationships that ground you, that motivate you, to have people who are doing things that excite you, to remind you kind of like what is excited about science, kind of your why. I think that's really important. I don't know how far I would have gotten if I didn't have people who I looked up to, that were encouraging me, like research mentors, but also friends that who challenge me because I look up to them, people who challenge me because they look up to me, right? That it's kind of this back and forth, and I think that's really important to keeping the energy up. And even the PIs I worked with, who were like my lab mentors, they I took time to sit down with them and ask them about what this journey would entail, kind of what they see my strengths and weaknesses as, and I found those, even though those conversations were kind of intimidating to initiate, that I almost always walk away feeling a lot better, because I think it's very easy for us to see what other people bring to the table, and it's always important for us to remind ourselves what we bring, how we can contribute, and also what we have to work on, because this whole process is training. It's all about improvement, both of like yourself and of like your research. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was building that team and having that mentorship.
Great, thank you all. So I really want to take this moment to sort of amplify something, if I can, that I think we heard throughout these answers, right? Which is that when you embark on a PhD or an MD PhD, you embark on a career as a scientist. Okay, this is not an easy thing to do. Right? You heard the statistics from Reuben. Right? This is not an easy thing to do, and so it is really important to recognize that none of us are going to do this entirely on our own, right? And I this is true for everybody who pursues a PhD. Okay? And I think it is probably even more true for those of us who come from backgrounds where, there's no one in our families or that we've encountered that has done this before. Okay. When my own family, my generation, myself, my siblings, we are the first to go to four-year colleges, right? And I'm the only person in my family to have gone and pursued a PhD. So this is we are sometimes forging new paths, for ourselves, and this is challenging. And so it is really, really important to connect with folks who know you, who are going to have your back, who are going to support you on this journey, because everybody who does this does it with the support of other people, even though sometimes some folks kind of like to pretend that they did it on their own, but even for them, it's not true. All right. So kind of, piggybacking on something that came up, a bit in David's answer. And so maybe, David, I'll have you tackle this one first. So you get to graduate school. Okay, wonderful. It's nice. I'm in at Hopkins. How did you identify a research mentor? And I want to tack on a specific piece of this is, how much emphasis did you place on the kind of mentoring that you thought you would receive in that research line?
Yeah, I'd say I figured out how to find a research mentor by doing it wrong a bunch of times. And so I hope that hopefully as you go to more of these events that you won't have to go through as much turmoil. But I really kind of broke it down into like what is like their mentoring style, like how interesting is the research, and the lab community. I realized that for my PhD program, we did like 6-week rotations in 3 different labs. And that's kind of give you like a taste of what each lab has to bring, and ultimately decide which one you want to stay in for like the thesis research. And ended up doing 4 because I knew after the 3 that I didn't want to be in any of the 3. And some of them, the mentor was just a very busy person, and so I wouldn't really have time to sit down with them. And I realized I needed more regular FaceTime, but I also need to not be micromanaged, because one PI would come up and talk to me every day, and that was also a little bit overwhelming. And one PI, he would meet with every other week, and I really liked that, and he was a nice guy, and it was good mentorship. But the lab community, I felt very alone in that space, and that's part of the culture that's already there, and it's not going to change just for me. And so I realized that I needed to find both a PI who's doing interesting research, which, there are plenty of those, one who has time for me but isn't going to be breathing down my neck, but also I need a space where I feel like I am like a person that I am seen. I can talk to someone in a day, but I'm also not going to be like overwhelmed. And so I think this is just a process of learning by doing, that you're not always going to know what you want exactly until you've had it or until you've lacked it. But and so I'd say the biggest thing is being open-minded, but keeping track of how you're feeling as you're going through each of these steps, so that by the time you get to this point, you're not, you don't find yourself feeling like stuck or alone.
Great. Thank you, David. Chijoke, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think David said a lot of things that I resonate with. But for me, I think that to find a research mentor, you need to figure out exactly what you need for yourself. You need to understand what you need. We all come from different places. We all have different levels of skills. So you have to understand what you need as a student. Then that will help you understand the kind of mentorship you need. If you don't figure out who you are, you may not be able to figure out the right mentor for you. For me, like David has said, for me, I know that I want a mentor who I can always walk up to and talk to. So that means I cannot pick a mentor who is not available, who I'm gonna see once a month. No, that will not work for me, because I know I need someone I can always walk up to whenever I have a challenge and speak to this person. I also want to pick a mentor who sees me for me, who doesn't have a problem with my color, and understand that I come from a disadvantaged background, and therefore don't judge me by my background. So you need to have that idea. So figure out exactly who you are and what you need. That will help you find a mentor. So first of all, understand this. Who are you? Ask yourself that question before if you're on the journey to finding a research mentor, and then find out exactly what do I need on this journey. For me, I need a mentor who is supportive. I don't want to be micromanaged, just like David said. I did just like David as well. I did a fourth rotation instead of three rotations because I couldn't find what I needed out of the three rotations. So I had to do an extra rotation. And the extra rotation helped me to find out exactly who I connect with. And most importantly, I feel like the lab environment is more important than even the mentor in quotes, because the mentor will be in his office, but the people in the lab, are they, what's their relationship with each other? Are they always antagonizing each other? I did a rotation in a lab where someone in the lab was always saying negative things about another person in the lab to me as a rotation student. I mean, why would you tell me some bad stuff about another person in the lab as a rotation student, not even as a student in the lab? So that made me understand that you can even talk about me negatively in my absence as well. So that helped me understand, no, this is not an environment for me. So find an environment where you connect with both the PI and the people in the lab. That's all you need. So to do that, understand who you are and what exactly you need in your journey.
Yeah, I guess if I could follow up on what Dave and Chijoke said, this is great advice. I really want to plus one on the find which you need. I would bold the you there. It's an intensely personal decision-making process. You know you best. So it's hard for us as a panel to be like, yeah, you got to find XYZ things. You got to, I think if there were any such principles that might exist of like, you got to find things that might be helpful that are worth considering, because it's not the end all be all. I would maybe say it's a plus one if it's present. Someone who's excited about you, interested in your career, passionate about you, someone who's interested in investing in you is probably someone you want to keep in your corner. Even if the science is not necessarily all the things that you want, if there's someone there who is focused on you, interested in you, trying to help you, that's a positive thing. And you should be open and accepting to that. It's not going to be a perfect process. The other thing I would say is give yourself some grace in that process. Sometimes you might think of it like, for example, like dating. The more experiences you have of like knowing people, like knowing, for example, the PIs, knowing the type of lab that you want, knowing the research that you want to be doing, knowing that you don't like micromanaging. These are things that you typically gain by doing it, going out into a lab experiencing it and be like, okay, you know what? I didn't actually enjoy that, the way that this person asked me questions every day about what I was doing. It almost felt like they didn't believe I was doing it. Yeah, I'm going to kind of avoid that one in the future. Or like, ooh, maybe I really like that this person kept sending me papers all the time and really was like trying to foster me to think about stuff. Like, that's probably a good sign. These are things that you'll learn as you kind of go around through the world of research, trying out different experiences. So one, to add on to what everybody else has said already, it's an intensely personal process for you. So figure out the things that you need, things that are helpful. If they're passionate about you, also really great. And then you can only really understand fully once you do research experiences to understand what you like and what you don't like in the context of a lab.
Let me add one more thing to everything we've said. I just remembered this. If you are choosing a research mentor for your PhD, also listen to other students. Listen to what other students are saying. Yeah, it's very, very important to listen to other students as well. So for my first rotation, I was told not to go to a particular lab by older students. They told me, I was told, don't go there. They told me, everybody was like, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. But I was like, I like the research in the lab. I like this research. I like this research. I want to go there for my rotation. I'm Some were like, okay. And then I went there for my first rotation and I did not enjoy it. It was not a good experience. So as you're choosing a research mentor, listen to other students, take their advice. It's very, very important. Have friends you can ask questions, older students who are ahead of you. Ask questions. I'm sure they will always give you the right advice. Most times, students don't lie. Listen to others.
Right, right. Students look out for other students. So
Yes,
trust and believe.
very important.
All right, thank you all. Fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. So I hope for those of you in the audience, you are, making note of some of these really critical points. And I think you've gotten great advice from each of our panelists. I would just also reemphasize that this is about you. This is your journey. If I can borrow Reuben's phrase, it's an intensely personal experience. And so as you're making these kinds of decisions, right, it should be about what works for you, not what works for someone else or what someone else thinks you should do. Okay. So, I want to talk a little bit about the experience of pursuing a PhD. And so, maybe for each of you, and Reuben, maybe we'll start with you. What's the biggest obstacle that you encountered during your PhD journey, and how did you overcome that?
Oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot of challenges there. I would say one of the things is that you realize at the end of the day that everybody's human. People are flawed. Research is a somewhat like more than we would like. There's actually a stat about this. There's a paper about the variability that happens for experiments, and it changes quite a lot depending on who's doing the experiment. We don't like to talk about that part of research because we like to think of this as being like truth, right? Truth finding, truth establishment. But in reality, a lot of things are human. Now, I'm not saying that about just the research quality, right? So don't think of like, my experiment didn't work today. Humanity, right? Like, okay, no, not just like that. I mean, the interpersonal interactions that you're having, like when you go into a lab, it's a journey. You're on a journey with people around you. Like we're a very interesting group of people who do PhDs in general. We have very specific interests. We have very specific passions, very particular things that we like to do. So understanding the lay of the land as well around you. Be interested in what other people are doing. Ask questions when people are talking. Like it shows one that you're engaged, that you're listening. There's nothing worse than someone who talks a long time and no one really cares. So if you can ask questions, show interest. I think some of the challenges that you'll experience in PhD world, they're not just the science. It's sometimes the things that get overlapped onto the science. And that looks very different. So I don't have maybe the most concise answer to give here. Some things that I'll point out that you should consider, lab environment, research opportunities. When you're applying places in general for PhD programs, be aware of the resources that are available in each of those different places. Every institution is not the same institution. They are very, very different places. So be aware of what that institution is known for. What's their passion? What are the things that their research program is really good at? And know those pretty well. And also know the geographic location. Sometimes I like to say is that we like to plan on the best possibilities, right? Like, does this place have, that person that I really want to talk to, and that one research project that I think is gold? Those are nice. Does it have the things that you need when the days are wrong? Like when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed that day and you're not feeling it, do you have all the things that you need in the lab, in the larger environment of the university, and in the place physically, geographically that you'll be? Do you have all the things that you need to take care of yourself? It is a challenge in that, more sometimes than, as much as the science is also a challenge. So we talked a little bit about the science. I guess my point is consider the things that are above the science as well. I'm a very heady person. I thought purely about science. And I think sometimes you got to step back and be like, practically speaking, do I have everything that I need here in this environment that I want, that I need, that I see for myself? And that can be a challenge. So being aware of other people, being aware of everything around you, being aware of all the opportunities, I think that that's also kind of a challenge.
Great, thank you, Reuben. Chijoke, anything? What's been your biggest obstacle so far, and how did you overcome that?
Okay. So I'll be personal as well, very personal. I am just starting my second year in my PhD. So first of all, when I started, like I remember I mentioned imposter syndrome initially. Yeah, there is always this question of, am I good enough? You know, am I good enough? So, and I don't think you are ever going to overcome imposter syndrome. But the point is that you get better at handling it. So when I started initially, I was a little bit, I was more into my shell, but thank God the shell has been broken now. So I was in my shell and all that stuff. But so imposter syndrome was a problem for me initially. But now, like I said, I'm in my second year now. I have been able to find a community for myself, a community that supports me, a community that encourages me, a community that always reminds me that yes, I am good enough. So finding a community has helped me handle imposter syndrome, helped me remember that yes, I can do this, which is very, very important. And another problem I had initially, which I think I'm getting better at it, is time management. Like how do you manage your time effectively? Because PhD is a lot, but I think I'm getting better at time management because I'm using some things I've learned from a book I read, and I recommend the book to any other person who has a problem with time management. Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. It's a great book. So some of the principles in that book, they've helped me master how to manage my time better and how to have a better work-life balance as well. And picking it back to what we said initially about finding a research mentor, make sure you look for a mentor who prioritizes work-life balance as well. So I am getting better at managing my time, balancing everything together. These are initially the major challenges I have experienced so far in my PhD. And just to summarize everything again, always be on the lookout for opportunities that for a community that supports you, for a community that is invested in you, that is ready to support you and to give you the right motivation you need. Because the community has helped me to be able to overcome some of these things. We have an African community here, we have a Black society here in our school, we have collaborative health equity here, we have people like Crista who are really providing the support I need. So when you have this support, it can help things become better for you.
Go ahead, jump in, David.
Yeah. I think we might have some overlapping challenges, but I'd say for me, one of the biggest challenges I've faced and had to relearn how to address is just self-advocacy. That even if you have a community of people who are willing to help you, you also have to take the step of like asking for what you need. And I think part of imposter syndrome can be just this endless giving the benefit of the doubt to people around you and not having that same grace for yourself. And so I found myself always trying to address my own problems when really there were other people there that would have been willing to kind of take some of that burden off for me, or to understand why I'm going through what I'm going through. So kind of speaking to the having a mentor that understands work-life balance, my PI told me, that students are more productive when they're happy, when they're well rested, when they're excited about their work. And if you're burnt out, it's like you're going to be less productive. And so he's like, there's no good in you being here for this 9 to 5 if you're exhausted and you're not getting anything done. It's like, I'd rather have you here for fewer hours and producing data than have you here all day and you're like burning the wick at both ends. And so one of my biggest challenges was finding, I kind of mentioned earlier, finding a research lab. And I went through multiple rotations, and by the fourth rotation, like in my first meeting on PI, I pretty much just listed out like what I needed from a PI, because I'm like, I don't want to waste your time, I don't want to waste my time. It's like I have a life outside of work that is important to me. I have family that's important to me, and I need a space. I need a mentor. I need space that recognizes that those things are going to take time. Those are going to take some energy, and I don't want that to count against me when I need to go home to see my family. Right. I also need a environment I need like mentorship, because I've had a bunch of research experience in the past, but it's not all relevant to what I'm doing now. So I need a mentor in the lab who's going to be patient with me, who's going to help teach me these new techniques, because I'm eager to learn. I want to be here, but frankly, I don't know what I'm doing yet. So I need like that support. And I need a PI who's going to like take time with me to like go over our data, that not every day, but not once a month either, right? If we could have like regular meetings, right, to have that stability, like that's also something that I really need. And it was kind of frustrating to me that it had taken me so long to just list out exactly what I need from this relationship. But, it also took that long to recognize that these are things that are important to me, because I saw what life was like when I didn't have it. And so I think, to wrap all that up, have grace with yourself, pay attention to yourself, and let your self-knowledge kind of help build your confidence and strengthen your ability to advocate for yourself, because that advocacy is really what carries you, because you, as great as we all want to believe we are, we can't do all this by ourselves. And so we need to just have the ability to communicate.
Great. Thank you all. So maybe relatively, hopefully there'll be a need only for relatively brief answers to this sort of follow-up question. So based on those obstacles and challenges that you faced, was there ever a moment when you thought about quitting? And if that occurred, what kept you going? Reuben, since you're the most advanced in training, I'm going to start with you.
Absolutely thought about it. My why, and honestly, persistence. That's the quality that they tell you, that they resilience. Resilience, I think, is the one that they like to talk about now. I don't know. Some points you thought about it, and it was like, I could, but I really see a future in what I want to do, and I think that it could be useful for the world. I don't want to back down off of that. It was like that a lot of the time. Input. You go around, touch grass, see the world, and put things in perspective. I think that also always really helps when I was like on the edge of being like, I want to quit. Go outside, touch grass. 1.4% of the population. Meet the other 98.6% of the population. Remind yourself, like, yes, this is life.
Sure.
Great perspective. David, Chijoke, any experiences for either of you where you thought, yeah, I'm a talented person, I'm a smart person, I can go do other things. Did that ever come to you, and what kept you going on this path?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the touching grass aspect, that there have been times I'm not sure if I ever really wanted to like quit, but there are times I wanted to like I just needed to like step away, because I was burnt out. I felt like I couldn't do like anything. And I think stepping away, like taking a vacation, and I think maybe I was a little too assertive in this, but like after my first thesis committee meeting, I had worked so long for months to like produce all this data, and I had the meeting and I was just like wiped out, and I'm like, yeah, so I'm not going to be here for the next week or so, because it's like I just need to like recover. And it's like having that space to like step away, get like not just like get out of the lab, like get out of the city, get out of the state. Like I like that like really re-energized me because by the time I got back to work, it's like I was excited about the work, but I needed to remove myself from that space. I needed to kind of reframe, recharge. And I think sometimes we run ourselves down so much that we can't forget why we're here. And so we need that like what we're going to do next week view, but we also need the what we're going to do next month and what we're going to do in a couple of years, right? You need to be able to move routine those perspectives, not just get caught up on the day to day, because that will wear you down. And so, yeah, I'd just say, like looking back at like would I regret more staying here or leaving? It's like every time I thought about that, it's like I'd regret leaving before I felt like I gave it all, gave it a fair chance. And there's nothing wrong with leaving, right? Like if it isn't for you, you shouldn't force yourself to do it for other people. But at the same time, if this really is something that is important to you, like take care of yourself in the ways that you need to sustain you through that process.
Okay. For me, I've never thought of quitting yet. Maybe because I'm just starting my second year. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. So I've never thought of quitting so far. But has it been overwhelming at some point? Yes. There have been days when I feel overwhelmed, I feel burnt out. I just want to go home and see a movie. I'm not like so burnt out. So I've had such days. But one of the reasons why I don't think I would ever think of quitting is because, like Reuben pointed out, if I ever quit, it's gonna affect the next black man who they're gonna bring into the program or add to the statistics, and then they're gonna say, "Oh, there was someone of this color who did not complete this program," and then they're gonna use my experience to judge an innocent person. So this is a thought that goes through my head because I want another person to have this opportunity that I have right now. I'm gonna make the most of this opportunity so that they're gonna look back and someday they're gonna say, because he did it well, maybe we should give another black man an opportunity because we don't have so many of us here. We just don't have so many of us here. So I want to do the best I can to give another black man the same opportunity because if we have a community of people who are quitting and they're all black, it's gonna sort of, skew the admission committee negatively. So I do not want to give an opportunity for that. And I have a personal philosophy that winners do not quit. So I don't think I will ever quit. But if I get to the point where I think I want to quit, I will definitely talk to people. I will definitely talk to my people, talk to people in my space. I think that will give me the clarity I need at that moment.
Great, thank you. Again, another re-emphasis of the importance of using that community around you. So I want to kind of maybe follow up on our previous point of conversation. So you've talked about challenges. You've talked about feeling overwhelmed at some points. Potentially contemplating leaving the program, but giving yourself the opportunity to re-engage with the world, right? If we can even call it the real world, not just our little academic bubble. So if you were to give advice to aspiring young black men who want to pursue this path as scientists, as medical scientists, physician scientists, what might some of that advice be? And we'll start with David.
That's a big question. But yeah, I guess the big part is surround yourself with people who believe in you. That a lot of my friends don't really have a great idea of like what I do day to day, and I think that is a huge asset. That having people with just like this outside world perspective who are just like a source of encouragement, like that's huge. But also that while there aren't a ton of us in this space, there are some of us. If your university has like a BSA has like any sort of like community groups, like even like East African Student Association is like another big one that has a lot of stuff going on here. It's like get involved, and even though it can feel like a lot on top of what you're doing, having like life projects outside of this is important. Being connected with people who are in this space and of your background is important. And I think when you have those parts, then the research gets a little bit easier, but also never discount that the research is also like hard, and it's going to be hard. You just be prepared for that, have that in your mind, that it's okay for this to be a challenge because this is challenging. But each step you took got you to this point. And so every step of your life is getting you brave for the next. So recognize that it will be hard, but also trust that you've built up the toolkit to handle this next challenge, and this will prepare you for the next challenge after.
Thank you, David. Chijoke?
Okay, so for me, if I'm talking to another Black man who wants to pursue the track, the first thing I'll ask the person is, or tell this person is to understand your big why. Why are you doing a PhD? Why do you want to do a PhD? If you can print your reason and hang it on top of your bed, please do it. Understand your big why. Why are you doing this? So why are you doing this part? So why do you want to do a PhD? If you're able to answer this question truthfully and honestly to yourself, I don't think there's any mountain you will not be able to climb. Understand your big why. And then when you answer this question truthfully and honestly, the next thing I will tell you is to know that trust the process. Trust the process. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be hard? Yes. But trust the process. Trust that you have the resources that can lead you there. Trust that everything you need is along the path. And whenever you get discouraged, don't beat yourself up. Give yourself some grace. Yes, give yourself some grace. You deserve all the grace you need to get. Give yourself some grace. You are not as bad as you think you are. No. In fact, you are better than you think. So give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace. So this is my advice to another Black man. Why do you want to do a PhD? Answer that question truthfully. And then trust the process and give yourself the grace you need.
Great. Reuben?
Okay, I wrote three things down here that I really want. They stratify by different things. I'll explain. So let me talk about PhD in general. I'm gonna talk about like a Black man in a PhD, and then I'm gonna give you like a perspective. I feel like that might be helpful. So PhD, remember the 1.4% part of it. You are, I don't know what faith you are, but you know, I'm Christian. You are anointed in some sense, okay? Like you are separated. That's probably a more appropriate term. And in that separation, that's a process. You have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to take feedback along the way. You're not going to do everything right. Forgive yourself for the things that you did not know at the time that you were tested on it. Not actual test, but in life, forgive yourself for that because you didn't know. But now that you do know, you need to make an active, concerted effort to make sure that you don't make the same mistake again. And that applies for lab, especially, because no one wants to have to teach someone 4 or 5 times how to do an experimental method. Not anyone's favorite thing to do. And then to minimize the moments, like you don't got to be perfect, but you should spend some active amount of time trying to figure out how do I minimize the mistakes I make. That will come with dividends of payoff down the road. So that's a PhD perspective. A Black man in a PhD, if there is such a thing as perfection, sometimes you might have to be very close in order to get through everything. Because for things that Chijoke had mentioned before about, you know, how this might affect the person that comes after me, you don't really want to have to put that on your shoulders, but unfortunately in this path, and especially with you being who you are, sometimes you have to. And that's okay. It's the world that we live in. And that's the part of reality that we kind of have to learn to accept. But the caveat is that you need to be able to find some way to give yourself grace in other moments, or grace, or the things that you need all the more to be able to hold yourself to that standard. This is the perspective part. So in biophysics, there's proteins are stable typically when they're low energy, when they have a bunch of conformations to explore, right? Bunch of different ways that the protein can move or shape. That's relatively generally a stable protein, right? It's hard. I think of like a manifold of like energy. When you start talking about existing in a state that is rare, high, there's not that much flexibility in it. It's a high energy state. And you oftentimes, what all systems want to do is find a way to get to low energy immediately. So if you have to operate, and this is unfortunately part of what you might have to do, operate in tough constraints, near perfect circumstances, showing up, communicating, doing all the interpersonal things, as well as the things in lab, as well as the things for your family, as well as the things outside of it. If you have to do all of that, find a way to minimize your energy. Try to find ways to understand that you're at this peak, you're in a high constraint system, and find ways to give yourself room to breathe outside of that. That oftentimes might be a hobby, that might be a circle of people. That you got to find out what works for you. But unfortunately, you will be scrutinized quite a bit because you're a rarity. I mean, and people look at rarities a lot. So your job is to kind of figure out, how do I exist in that space while also giving myself the ability to grow and breathe and be as a normal person, as you have your indelible right to do. But remember that high energy states, not favorable. Got to find a way to release the energy. Got to go back to a low energy state.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all so much. So I think what we want to do now is open this up for questions from folks in the audience. So if you are in Lancaster, please come forward and ask a question. If you are online, please feel free to put a question in the Q&A box, and I will monitor the Q&A box and read the questions out to our panelists. So while folks are getting their questions together, let me just ask one more thing, which, hopefully will be a little bit lighter, which is, what's been the most rewarding part of your PhD journey?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's been like mentorship that I just find like incoming students to be like very encouraging. They're all still so excited about like this journey, about being in grad school, being in this post-bac, and there's like full of ideas and stuff. And I just find that yeah, so older people in the PhD journey can be a little bit jaded, but I find mentoring is like a good way for me to remind myself like why I'm here, what's exciting about science, and I feel like I never want to forget like that feeling of just like coming here excited to like get my hands dirty,
Good. Reuben, what's been your most rewarding aspect of this journey?
Ooh, is it shallow to say the degree at this point? The degree is pretty rewarding. I'm not gonna lie. When you get across it and you realize what you've done, you have a greater sense of appreciation for the things around you. It's a testament. It's a beautiful thing.
Good. Yeah, we will definitely take that as an answer, right? It is. To write sort of what you said at the beginning, right, about the 1.4%, right? Everything that we accomplish all the way along the journey, from completing kindergarten to graduating high school, going to college, graduating from college, getting that first job, going to graduate school. We should celebrate all of those things. Because for each of those things, you worked hard for it, and there were a group of people around you who supported you and helped you get there. Right? And we should not take any of those things for granted, and so we should celebrate them all. And so we should definitely celebrate the PhD, and it should be a reward, right? You definitely worked for it, and you've earned it. Chijoke.
For me, I'm just gonna make a joke. So for me, the most rewarding part of the PhD so far is that sometimes you get free food. Just that's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's a joke. Yeah, that's a joke. So for me, the most rewarding part of the PhD has been the fact that I am doing something that potentially can change lives. For me, that has been the most rewarding part. Experiments fail, things do not go as planned, but the fact that in one way or the other, even if what I am doing is going to contribute 0.00001% to the field of TB, in the end, it's a contribution that has been made. So this is what I feel like is rewarding for me. And also the fact that I get to come into the lab every day and see people who are my friends, because they are no longer my colleagues, they are my friends. So it's been rewarding. It's been rewarding so far for me. That has been a rewarding experience.
Great, thank you. So there's a question in the Q&A. And the question is, what do each of you do for fun to give yourselves that work-life balance? And Reuben, we'll go first. So Reuben, Chijoke, and then David.
Gym. The gym is my best friend. I would not have made it this far without the gym on all the days that were rough. That plus I started yoga recently, and that's really nice for the breathing. Honestly, just a moment where you're moving in kind of unconventional ways, doing different stuff. So the physical aspect of like reminding myself that I'm a human and taking care of my body, that was great.
For me, the what I do for fun outside this entire PhD thing is, like, I don't know what your faith is, but I'm a Christian as well, and I am very, very involved in my church. Very, very involved in my church. So helping out in church, serving in church, it's like it gives me the opportunity to dissipate my frustration and hand my frustration to the Lord. Yeah, that's how I see it. So I hand my frustration to the Lord. So I'm very, very involved in the service of God in my church. So very, very involved in that. And apart from that, some weekends I spend my time hiking. So we go to different places, we hike, we have some fun, and then we also do cookouts. I do cookouts regularly with my friends. I come from it. We all come from different places, so different cultural dishes. So we do that, and that kind of invigorates me. I kind of get rejuvenated after I do some of these things. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be of the philosophy that people I work with are my coworkers, and my friends are like the people outside of work. But I joined a lab where I like people I work with, and we've started to just do like, every month we'll have just like an event that we plan to do together. And I realized that's been very fun for me. It's not something I think has applied to all workspaces, but I think getting out and knowing my friend, like my coworkers outside of work, in some capacity has kind of helped us see each other as like real human beings in like multiple dimensions, and that's just been fun. So we do something. We're all from like I'm the only like one of my coworkers like from America, so there's a bunch of like cultural events and stuff that we do. So that's just been exciting for me. I also this is new this year, but I try to read like a book a week. And so that's like my challenge for 2024. So right now we're on track, but I think just getting into like a fantasy or a fiction world, something that's like completely outside of day-to-day life has been rewarding. And then outside of that, a lot of my friends are musicians, and so we'll go to like jazz in the park. A lot of them are like we'll do like jazz stuff. So we'll go to like jazz clubs around town, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of music in my life, and I think music is can be incredibly rejuvenating.
Great. Thank you all for your answers, and thanks, Robert, for that question. So I want to encourage additional questions from audience members. So please do not be hesitant or shy to come forward with a question. I see Dr. Johnson-Agbakwu come into the podium.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, mic drop to each of you. This has been beyond powerful. I feel like this needs to be live streamed in so many venues to reach so many people, especially students of color. I mean, it's inspiring for me, and I'm a faculty member. It just so resonated with me what Reuben was saying about that 1.4% and just really anchoring our why. I mean, so much of what you all said were just profound words of wisdom and truth that I think resonates with all of us who have passed through and are passing through or seeking to pass through this journey in the health sciences. So I just want to honor you all with just how powerful this session has truly been and inspiring for all of us who are listening to your sage words. I did have a couple of questions that jumped out in my head as I heard you all speak. One of the things that really resonated with me was thinking about quitting, right? And when the question was asked about, have you ever thought about quitting? That is so deep and so profound. And I look back over my own journey. For those who don't know, I'm an OBGYN faculty at UMass Chan Medical School. I'm also the executive director of the cooperative that helps that lead. And part of what we're doing is seeking to diversify and amplify and create safe spaces to nurture our learners of color and build strong partnerships with our communities, especially communities who remain underserved. And something that jumped out at me when the question about quitting came up was when I look back on my own journey, there are so many of my fellow classmates, especially students of color, who didn't make it, who unfortunately quit. And it's not because of their own might, it's not because of their own fortitude or their own drive or resilience. I heard that word mentioned, resilience, but unfortunately the system failed them. And that just profoundly sticks with me because as a faculty member, as a leader in medicine, we have to do better, and we have to carve greater intentionality of better serving, not just getting all of these students into these amazing programs that you all are in and have been sojourning through, but how do we ensure that during their time there, they have every ability to not only succeed, but thrive? And not only that, but take it to the next level, become the faculty, become the faces like Brian, right? Who can be that faculty of color to give back. And something that jumped out at me is, as a faculty member, what can we do to better serve our students of color, especially our Black men, right? Because we all bear that minority tax. And it's something that struck me as I was hearing you all speak. If you might be able to even talk about the minority tax, because that's real. That is real. What can we do to encourage more young scholars like yourself, especially Black men, right, and Black women and other learners of color, that we can be a better support in ways that ensures not only their success but their ability to thrive and also become one of us in these positions to be able to have this role to help the next generation of scholars and pass that baton on for that intergenerational work and journey that we're on to advance this work, right? And to diversify and change that, 1.4%, 7% of that, right? Those are just astonishing numbers. So I don't know if you all wanted to talk, answer that, but that's just something that really resonated with me in terms of how we can better support scholars and students as yourselves, but also hope bring more of us into the fold to be the faculty mentors for the next generation.
Thank you very much.
I think he might have dropped out.
Yeah,
Dr. Lewis?
I think we lost.
He might have
Yeah, I
lost.
think he might have frozen.
Yeah, I'm
He's back
returning.
now.
So, I came to work to do this session because I figured this is where I'm going to have the most stable internet. So it turns out that's not true. So, my contribution here was simply just to say, thank you for that, those comments and that question. I think it's a really profound question to ask. And so I'm going to turn to my colleagues on the panel here. What, Dr. Johnson-Agbakwu and I are in the same spot, right? We are senior faculty members. We are institutional leaders. What can people in our positions do to ensure that, we start off with a lot more than 7% of the 1.4%, and that at the end of the process, we've not reduced the number who started the journey but didn't complete.
Yeah, I think kind of as someone who's kind of been a part of like programs involved in like supporting like underrepresented people in STEM, both like Mara Hoff and now like Vivian Thomas, I'd say one of the really important things is just like outreach and intentionality. I think at Hopkins we talk about this all the time, is how it's like sometimes it feels like people don't care to take the initiative to reach out to even like MSIs and HBCUs, because a lot of folks in our position might not even know about this pathway to begin with. And so, reaching out to schools in the area and that sort of thing to just, first of all, introduce people to the concept of like the PhD route, and then also, and once they're like in like college, that sort of thing, opening up programs to allow people to have some exposure to research. Right, not every university has the best, has the most research opportunities. So being able to do like summer research, that sort of thing, is like instrumental for a lot of people, and even just building up the self-esteem to want to continue the process. Having that foundation of research at any level, I think, is a big part. And then once we're in grad school, like staying on the pipeline, a big part. I think you could break it into, first of all, having a cohort of people who are going through the same thing with you. So actually having like formal programs to connect people of color with one another is huge because I think we're our biggest source of encouragement. Having networking. So networking would be like number 2, connecting with Black faculty, connecting with faculty who are doing research that we're interested in, just having that opportunity to meet folks and facilitate those interactions. And then I think 3, and this is not always something that people have control over, but funding, because financial limitations, I think, can be the biggest thing, that not everyone's coming from the best financial situation, and also other things in life come up that will pull your attention away, will pull your energy away, pull your funding away. And so if you have funding, if you have the financial resources to stay here, I think that is it's not just good to have money in the way everyone would love to have money, but it's good. It's a resource that will allow people to stay on course throughout. And so if an institution has money available to scrape aside for that, even if it's like a little bit for like master students, like pay them for like hourly work or something like that, I think that can really be a make or break thing for a lot of underrepresented students.
I'm gonna second everything David said. +1.
Yes. I just, for me, the funding stands out for me. Dr. Brian, don't take this the wrong way. I think so I go to school at UMass Medical School, and there's an initiative in UMass called INSD. Yeah, I think that's a very good initiative, very very good initiative. I think it can be more inclusive because I know it's majorly focused on permanent residents and citizens, but we also have international students coming in who are neither permanent residents or citizens as well. So I think if we can have programs just like IMSD, for instance, that will be more inclusive for everybody, because not all Black students are citizens or permanent residents. So a more inclusive um, of funding for such students. So, by the way, IMSD, it's a program in UMass Medical School that supports underrepresented students, and it aims to give them some funding and mentorship as well. And over a period of years, and they get a little more than their stipend from such initiative. Very brilliant initiative. But I think if we can make it more inclusive, that can help students. So if we can have such opportunities on a larger scale for everybody, I mean, this will encourage a lot of students who are doing their PhD who are Black or people of color. Also, I also think that, just like David has said, if we can have like maybe once in a while check in with students of color, a check in by faculty there, and then to know how they are doing, I think it's gonna be very, 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 very helpful. Like once in a while, maybe once in everybody's busy, so maybe once in a quarter of the year, once in 3 months, a check in can help encourage students of color.
Great, thank you all. And I think Chijoke, your last point, right, which is that as part of the community or support system around the student, right? And I forget who mentioned this earlier in our conversation, but sometimes simply knowing that there are people around who care can make all the difference, right? And so that kind of regular interaction check-in is a way to communicate that. It's really important. Okay, do we have any additional questions coming from the audience or online?
The question here for Dr. Myers.
Hello, gentlemen. I didn't have a question, but I wanted to commend you all for taking the time to just impart knowledge and wisdom. Truly appreciate each and every one of you. David, I'm located in Baltimore, so with your permission, I'll try to get some contact information. Would love to connect with you. I do a lot of work in and around Baltimore. And Reuben, I believe that you are somewhere in California, Northern California. I'm doing some work out there as well. And so I think there's been a problem just in terms of there being a division and divide between industry and education, and the two rarely come together. And it baffles me sometimes that we have living, walking examples of excellence. And I'm looking at some on the screen right now, but children they're not afforded the opportunity to really interact with professionals in a meaningful way. And I'm not just talking about mentorship, but I mean, sometimes just being able to see someone, and even if you don't have a conversation, it really helps children dream bigger. So I talked a lot about that in my keynote this morning. I think the best thing that we can do for children is to just encourage them to dream big. And when you stifle those dreams, you really put a lid in terms of a ceiling on what they can become. And so I wanted to commend you all. Would love to follow up with some of you, because I think that we're doing work that is greater than us individually, even if we don't realize it. Some of the things that we're doing now, is legacy building, but the next generation, we want things to be better. I tell people all the time, the conversations that I'm having now, I don't want to have in 30 years. I want to see change, and the change is going to happen. The cavalry's not coming. We are the cavalry. So again, my brothers, I commend you all. I will follow up with each and every one of you. And if there's anything that I can ever do to further cause, David, I know you said have family, but if you ever need a hot meal, man, let me know. I'm in Baltimore. So thank you all. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate those comments. And so as we wrap up, and maybe let me just ask each of you for a closing word. And I will do this in the order that you're currently on my screen. So we'll start with Reuben.
Yeah. All of you are gifted. Let's just put that out there. You have more than enough competence. If you are in this room right now, you are motivated. You are here. Somebody cares about you enough to have put you on the list to make you keep. There were at least people set this up that cared enough about you to give you the tools, the keys, the information, which oftentimes is a lot of the battle. So don't doubt your competence to do these things. You can. It is a matter of understanding your why, really trying to figure out what is the cause, what is the reason, why would you go do it? I think of it like running a marathon. You sometimes might ask someone why. Why would you choose to run 24 plus miles? In the same way, why would you choose to give 6+ years to education? What's the purpose? And you need to have a very good reason for that. But you're smart enough. You have all the tools, the competencies are there. If I can flip it on the other side, maybe say something a little bit less nice to other people. There are a lot less competent people who are also here. So there are for you. So you just have to make sure that you capitalize.
Thank you, Reuben. Chijoke?
Okay, so I'd like to encourage everyone to tell you, just to reiterate Reuben's point. You can do this, and don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on yourself. A wise man once said that your background has no reason to keep your back on the ground. Your background has no reason to keep your back on the ground. So that you come from a disadvantaged background, or you don't have the resources, or you don't have research experience, or you don't have all the resources available to you at the moment, it's not enough to keep your back at the ground. So keep pushing, keep pressing. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. I love this quote by Martin Luther King Jr. He says, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. Just know that the little things you are doing, don't discount the little things you are doing. Believe in yourself. You too can do this. Thank you."
Right. Thank you very much, Chijoke. And David, you get the last word here.
Yeah, I guess I'll close us out. Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that definitely I say keeps me going, and I would put out to everyone, is that there are so many people who look like us from our background who would die for the opportunity to do what we are doing. That it is no small thing that we are here, and that shouldn't be something to scare you, but it should be encouragement for us to make the most of this opportunity, because there are a ton of very smart, very qualified Black people that would never have the chance to be here to do this, and so the fact that we do is a tremendous privilege, and I always want to remind myself of that. I always want to remind people I'm working with about that, because we're never going to know it all. We might not ever be the perfect scientist that we aspire to be, but we can do our best. We can cherish this experience, and not just look at it as a challenge, but an opportunity to really take on some of these big challenges in science to actually make the world a better place and to carve a path for others to take, so it won't be as hard for the next generation and the generation after that. That, like was said earlier, we are the cavalry, so we have to keep that in mind. That it's kind of on us to move the ball forward and to raise the standard of what we can achieve in like this biomedical space. So that's what I'll leave with.
It's an excellent point to leave us on. I want to communicate my appreciation to each of you for spending part of your Saturday here. Saturday afternoon for David and Chijoke, Saturday morning for Reuben, out on the West Coast. Appreciate your time, appreciate everything that you had to say and everything that you shared. And I hope all of us, who have been, able to participate, that we've all taken away something, right, that will keep us moving forward, will keep us motivated, keep us on the path that we're on. We're doing this is an intensely personal journey. We're doing this for ourselves, but we're not just doing it for ourselves, right? And we should keep all of that as part of our why as we move forward. Dr. Johnson-Agbakwu, I turn to you to close us out.
No, there's no words to express our gratitude for your time, your passion, your words of wisdom. It's just been inspirational to us all. So I just want to commend you, Reuben, Chijoke, David, Brian. Just an absolutely profoundly phenomenal session. I just thank you for your time and your huge impact on countless learners. It's been moving beyond words. So thank you. And on behalf of Dr. Shrees Hamlin and Patients Are Waiting, this has been truly remarkable. I think that's about it.
Great.
Hopefully we'll continue the conversation, but this was a phenomenal session.
Thank you. Certainly a pleasure to be part of it.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.